you. So we are online, so we missed the introductions. I'll just make an announcement for Dawn that the mics did not turn on as planned. They are on now. We have the school board with us, and we are working our way through the second version of the proposed budget.
I think we'll go section by section and let the superintendent begin, and people will sort of chime in as needed.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Just to let you know, we are going to get current financials, so those will be back in 25 minutes. Changes to the budget. A lot of the changes are on this document and then on this document.
Right.
So I tried to encapsulate the discussion from the last meeting that I attended on this one, and then we had some changes that we made. So if we want to pick this sheet up, then we can start with the lines that correspond to that.
Okay.
So the board, currently the substitute rate in the Nottingham School District is $70 a day, and that hasn't been updated since probably around 2007. And with the economy as well as it's operating right now, the board needed to consider increasing the sub rate to make sure that we can fill our substitute positions.
Right.
So they increased $75 a day, and you can see the increase in the 2 lines because of that, and then corresponding FICA adjustments. Decreases on the 15th of December, two staff members filed for early retirement, and so we made adjustments based on a conversation between Mr. Sousa and I, and then with the board, on what was a safe step and track to insert into those lines to potentially reduce them. So we elected for one of the positions a bachelor's plus 7, and then a critical shortage position and master's plus 10. So when we codified, we looked at what's been done in the past and the 20,000. So the note needs to be changed, but the numbers. In history, that we pay that $20,000 out of this year's budget, and then the $9,000 out of next year's budget, the retirement stipend. So we've made those corresponding reductions to those lines. We removed, and as we go through the budget, you'll see it. We removed $3,500 from your GASB 45 because that's actually been done today. I received it today. And so you won't need a budget for that for next year. We also decreased your audit line because you had $10,000 budgeted and your audit's coming in. In advertising and legal notices, that was one of the questions that was on your other sheet too. The board took a look at prior year actual. That $5,000, and then $57.31 new equipment. Originally there was some audio-visual materials in those that the board believes that we can probably take out of the cable franchise fees, so we reduced that. After discussion with Mr. Sousa and then conferring with the board, the administration had put $7,000 in the budget for sinkhole repairs, although we've repaired some this year. and there doesn't appear to be any at this time next year. So we felt like we could reduce that for now. That's $7,000.
We do have a capital reserve fund with
Yep.
the balance as well, to support that if need be.
And if you go to the food service section, we reduced $1,000 out of food and milk. That, please don't take that the wrong way. It doesn't mean we won't get the food and milk. We just reduced it to this year's actuals. And then we had a discussion about the GMR, guaranteed maximum rate for insurance. And I took a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year history. 6-year history, sorry. And looked at the guaranteed maximum rate and what the actuals were. Other than 1 year, for instance, 1 year the GMR was 9.3, it came in 3.1. 1 year was minus 1.7, it came in at minus 3.5. Another year you had 2 plans running, so you had a 10.2% GMR to a 26.5%. We reduced not reduced 1%, but
Right.
1 percentage point.
yeah, which turns out to about $7,800 total. So I think the board is cognizant of the budget and is trying to make reductions where they can, competing with your increase in tuition for your high school. So, and there's a good chance that at the next meeting, we might have a firmer number on who's going where, or at least who's going to one school, because the deadline comes, and then we'll be able to take a look and make some adjustments there. So,
And that's really the issue there, is the enrollment numbers, as opposed to, our tuition increases are not higher than typical at all. It's just that we have, and this will continue for the next several years, as we have higher grade enrollment in those grades. So
You can-
5, 6, 7, and 8 are
I mean, you can really see that if you turn to if you look on page 21, starting on 21, flowing into 22. Look at those first 2 lines, or that section would be right away. 11% increase based on the number of kids going into 8th grade as opposed to the number of kids leaving 12th grade. Leaving 8th grade, going into 9th grade, and then the ones leaving 12th grade. Even with, going to the next section, even with the reduction in special education high school lines, it's not enough to offset the increases in the regular ed. So if you would like, I can take you through your questions.
Make a note on this table, the first line where you had the substitute. I think you were referencing.
Yeah, 112 is the substitute.
Oh.
I think the increase is in
Yeah, yeah.
5120.
Thank you. Actually, do you want to take this? So we go to this document?
Yeah.
A lot of these. I'll let him
So starting with the first question, I was here. For the last 3 years, have been different because currently our art department is now purchasing orders of paper actually a reduction in order to help us balance our costs, pricing in bulk, quality, so that all the teachers now are going to him. Own closets. So that's why that line was up a bit. Stop me if you have any questions of it. Line, work. This year we purchased supply of some books that more than what we needed. So it resulted, for instance, in math of a $600 savings just in purchasing. In addition, are no longer doing teachers because of the purchase the paper copy of the workbook. Entire class, if we use online, we get the same story in multiple levels for Lexals and reading abilities. So it's actually better quality education by using the online resources and then printing them off. We haven't seen, although I still wait to get the numbers on our copier pieces, I haven't noticed well, I think we'll probably see the corresponding decrease in workbooks. The next line is the new equipment. Why so high and so low? We under the maintenance line, we purchased and sold a new sink for the 5th grade science classroom. So this year, based on their discipline or content area, and the students are evolving through the classes. So one teacher teaches science, one math, and one reading, and they're writing with social studies across the curriculum for all 3 of them. The science class needs to sync, have experiment pieces with that. So that's co-curricular stipends, and this one stays per the CBA. Teachers who spend another well to that as well. Question about retirement. You take that one?
Yeah, that was one of the business administrators' adjustment to align chart of accounts. So 1420 523128 and 5232. Line 1420 5231 uses the correct. The chart of accounts. We're talking about uniforms.
Yep. Okay, so the next line is baseball uniforms we purchased in 2016. We didn't spend the money on athletic director coming in, bit of a gap in transition as we looked for someone to take over. So we level funded it with the purpose to buy basketball uniforms the next year. So that's the inconsistency pieces. The next line under athletics was around the repairs to the question was around detail to repairs done to the softball and volleyball surfaces. The volleyball court, which is the outside volleyball court, needs bumpers to keep the sand in. We spent a lot of time, we had a lot of donations and a lot of in-kind work. I will call up the LePaco family who did some tremendous amount of effort to redo the outside volleyball court, which is used a lot in the summertime and the off-season with families. I think Mr. Bartlett helped out with that as well. And we need some bumpers and some materials to hold all that sand in there. We actually had to dig out the old sand and put special sand inside, as well as other new equipment. And we're putting a cover on it to keep the animals out so it doesn't become just like a big, Yeah, enough said. So, while this amount will not fully cover all the expenses that are hoping the next few years on that area, as well as the field. So currently, we know there's always questions around fields. We've been working with the NYA to turn our front softball field into one that not only they can be proud of and play on a regular basis, but also the middle school team can call their home field. Sharing the fields down here have been pretty successful over the years, but as more vie for that space, we have had some overlap in time and frame. So currently, we've worked, like I said, with NYA. We've got the field where it's safe to play now. We had ledge that we had covered up interior. The NYA has put up a fence, but we still need some work to do to spruce up the infield, probably replace it as well, and then do some other work.
The next so we'll have to get back to you on that. That's easy.
You could read that number?
I can. New backpack vacuums to replace the 2 of our oldest vacuums. And then someone wanted an explanation of transfer to food service. So I asked for that in writing, because it's confusing for everyone. That line is present to allow the transfer at the end of the school year, the fiscal year, of funds from the unassigned general fund to the food fund to cover any losses the food service program incurs during the school year. The food service fund is not supposed to carry any positive or negative balances from one fiscal year to the next. So there's nothing in that line budgeted, but that's a transfer line for us to transfer out.
I think the history in that line too was at one point, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the business administrator had wanted to just budget a line there and anticipate what would be the deficit, and we had talked about it here and determined not to do that. So that line has been budgeted line on, which is an actual transfer from general fund based on actual loss or revenue coming from that area.
If we go on to the next line, the budget committee asked for some detail on the food service repairs to equipment. That's there was 11 in 16-17. There was $1,137 to bearing lock and safe for doors and locks. 17-18 there was $600 to GKS service to replace a high limit thermostat. 18-19. $4,000, and to date they've spent $663 for repairs to the walk-in cooler. A typo correction, and then they corrected the
Yeah, just to detail any other, changes that came up since the last time. I know some of the previous versions that we had errors in the software. 1,300. The next year, we only spent 700 or 600. Number, if it was.
Just trying to anticipate based on the average cost of something goes, some of the equipment is $2,000-3,000 to replace,
Yeah.
so some kind of buffer.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's start with page 1. Again, I'll just remind the Budget Committee that note needs to be adjusted. But the number is correct for now. Any questions on page 1 or issues on page 1?
That's the only change on page 1?
Well, plus they adjusted the GMR for insurance from 8.7 to 7.7.
Okay.
Which will be peppered throughout.
Yeah, that'll show up in a bunch of different places.
So does that show up in, it's health insurance, right? Adjustment, and it'll state the 7.7%, maximum of 8.7.
Adjustment to the substitute salary line.
Right. Okay.
Page 2. Just give me a second.
Yeah, no.
Line it up, 2 of them. Yeah. Keep track of this. Of course, the pages vary.
Maybe it's just me.
I started trying to do that.
Right.
The lines don't line up on every page, so you get the.
I've got a reference back and forth.
Oh,
So.
yeah, the lines are tough to.
Coordinator's the same. Retirement, because of those changes to the, regular salaries, the teacher salaries, you're gonna see corresponding retirement decreases.
The $8,005. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, now it's less than it was last year.
Okay.
Those are the anticipated replacement.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if, did any of you get a chance to look at this earlier today? No? Okay.
Yeah,
so
I wasn't aware.
I
that-
appreciate
I
your.
wasn't aware that Dawn was out. I emailed it to.
Yeah,
her.
none of us were, so
I
that's
apologize.
fine. No, that's fine, it's just, so
I was like,
because of that, I, appreciate it if you just point out,
Yep,
the
there-
changes, because we haven't had a chance to
Right,
compare. and-
there are no other changes on that
Okay.
page. On page 3.
page 3?
For the first section of page 3.
Well, the total regular education cost,
Right, the cost center has changed because of page
Yeah.
1.
so we're at a
Individual
negative,
lines are the same on page 3.
yeah, 0.3% increase versus a 2.2% increase. That's a big number change.
Go on to page 4.
So the regular education costs now.
Right,
57.
are lower because
How
of the
much?
adjustments to the retirement, the corresponding FICA and the teacher salary lines.
Reduced 12,458
Yep.
for people that might be listening, which is a negative, a little under 1%.
If we look at the special education section. Right, it dropped 1/10 of a percentage points because of the adjustment to the GMR. So that says that there were no changes on page 4. 5. Oh, the preschool number.
So,
Five.
yeah, there's, so special ed tuition preschool was an increase of 165, now it's showing 173.
No, that's because they
And then it's
changed the lines to the charts of accounts. So if you look at the first line, where it says special education preschool 5563000,
yeah,
that was miscoded on the function and object code. So we left that as 0, and then 2 lines underneath special education tuition preschool is the right function and object code.
okay.
So the story behind that is that you had budgeted $172,097 for this year. And for next year, it's going to be $165,769.23. So when you take the GMR, the substitute increase, the GMR reduction, and the preschool increase, it results on page 6, changing from 0.85
And the SAU board finalized their budget at the last meeting. And the preschool amount is based on a rolling average.
Yeah, well, we try to do a 3-year average for the preschool, so we take the special education students on the 6/30 child find date. And we try to average the budget so it doesn't cause spikes in any of the 3 towns. So your allocation is based on a 3-year previous average, which helps us even out spikes and make sure it's equitable based on enrollment. The downside to that is somebody can look at the budget and say, you're paying this much, but we only have this many kids, but really you have this many kids in the previous 3 years averaged out. So, but it is a way to try to equitably distribute the cost without causing budget spikes based on enrollment.
Okay. So what's the difference between, line, it's the second one, where you moved that original 173,000, that decrease ended up showing up in the next line, special education tuition, non-public elementary, for 170,585.
That's a different line. So the 2 line, the preschool lines, is that what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, but, well, because, oh, so that's preschool, that's non-elementary, all right, so the preschool, or the tuition non-public elementary, 170,
That's your out of district place.
And then what's the special education tuition, non-public elementary, 3 lines down from that?
To recoup.
257,000, that's at 0.
Right, because again, your function and object codes in your chart of accounts were erroneous.
Okay.
So so here's what we have to do.
It's just moving them to a different line?
Well, if we delete the line and put it in a new line, then you lose your history.
Oh, right, okay.
It's always good to have your history.
Yeah.
So we leave the line and then correct it. And it would be nice if we could get our system to like line up preschool to preschool, but it's all based on the numbers. So it's a little confusing.
It is a little
Apologize
confusing.
for that.
All right, thank you.
Yep. We go to page 6.
So Scott,
Yeah.
the special education tuition preschool, and then 2 lines down, special education tuition preschool go together. And then you go down to special education tuition, non-public elementary, and then these 2 go together. So although they're not going together, that's how.
That's why I was
And
getting a
then-
little confused, I'm looking at it.
Right, and then, so you can see 0, 0, 0, and then there's a number.
Right, so it just, yeah, it maintains the history.
And they both went down. Yep.
Yeah,
Down by one.
trying to align your charts of accounts is gonna be a 3-year process before, and then your history will drop off,
Right.
right? The line will not appear.
Okay.
That brings us to the end of the special ed section.
Co-curriculars dropped.
That's an adjustment that didn't-
What did you?
So, in your first version, they had added,
7,500
first version, 21,600. And there was a proposed 3,000 stipend for wider horizons.
Oh, and then there was,
We reduced that to 1,000 because it's a new position and thought the board thought it would be a good idea to phase that in. So that dropped your number,
yeah.
2,000. So now your total co-curricular, instead of being up GMR. The GMR adjusted the guidance line here.
Yeah.
That GMR, when do you find out the actual rate?
After the. I did look that up, I was curious. Last year we did on the 22nd of March.
Oh, of course.
All these changes in GM.
Label them on that page.
Yeah. So if you look at the nurse, and you're looking at,
Like from 44, 15 to 46.
just get the GMR again, just a little adjustment there. There was no changes to your contracted service line? So now we're on page 11.
10,400.
So again, a minor adjustment because of the GMR adjustment.
Just GMR, I think.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's the same. Instructional and curriculum development. Just a minor change because of the GMR adjustment. Library and educational media, I do want to stop and give you an explanation of this line. So, the position isn't budgeted for the track change to the highest track in the CBA, that's where the person falls. In previous budgets, the track changes were not included in the budget numbers. And so, when the employees shifted track and step, that's why you see those increases. They're still on the collective bargaining agreement, has to do with track changes and level of education. But if you didn't know that and you looked at that, you'd see that the number increased exponentially. Computer assisted instruction. So there's a $500 difference.
Corporate
GMI.
Director of Technology, so we have GMI in there.
Yep, it's a GMI. Other support services, instructional staff. $100 difference with the GMR. And then in school board services, we took $1,500 off for the audit, $3,500 off for the GASB, should be $75, and then $1,000 out of advertising and legal expenses. That's the changes to that section. You all right? SAU district assessment is up based on evaluations. So that's gone up.
So is that a final number? Or
Yeah, it's just adopted. It's adopted.
Now we had 550. The only difference that we have. Now, it says proposed. Has it made that much of a difference?
Well, no, it's not just that. Percent of the total valuations for the SAU and the K-12 student population. So I think your percentage is not a bit.
So what I'm saying, in our last packet, we had a 7.
On the 11-15,
Yeah.
What number are you looking at?
We were at 515, now we're at 484.
oh, there's another budget in between that. So you were originally at 466.
Right, and then
515,
And now
then
we're
you went
at
down to
4.
480.
So the district assessment.
Yeah.
So what did they do at that software? Because we had talked about that.
Well,
I'm catching up still.
Sorry.
do with the software is to purchase the software, but to purchase it out of fund balance. So the SAU fund balance works a little different than the district fund balance. The SAU is allowed to carry a fund balance from so there's about $432,000 in a fund balance. So we created a fund balance sort of transfer line in the SAU budget to take that major software purchase out of that fund balance and not cause a significant spike in your for all three towns.
And the accounting on that was, the audit committee was working on that. We had met with the new auditors and talked through it, and they recommended that we talk to legal. So Superintendent Rooney spoke with our attorney, spoke with Harper, our auditor, treatment, and bringing it in, showing them the process as revenue. So there were multiple.
Yeah, like meeting with an auditor and an attorney.
Well, I think those.
We actually all agreed, so it was helpful.
Yeah, I mean, make yourself very aware as well as the joint board about what that unassigned fund balance is, how it's been accumulated, how best it can be returned to towns to offset taxes, what changes can be made to procedures at the SAU around cash flow, and what is the appropriate level of funding to be able to have access to cash flow, because they flaunt cash as a grant, so they need to have something there. So it's been a pretty big process.
Right, and it's multi. I mean, it's just not the grant. It's also like you have some contracted services that you pay for out of the SAU for like speed for UOT. Well, I've been working with Mr. O'Sullivan. Is he back? He's back.
He's back.
On trying to get those bill outs done. I'm not going to say July because I know they're shutting down and setting up, but in August, and then draw off of each month to reduce the load on the fund balance, because you got to have cash to pay people. Then there's the grants in addition to that. And so what I've done with the grants is try to speed up the submission and approval and return process. And so now we just need to sort of look at that data and see what effect it has, and then present it to the audit committee so they can determine what an appropriate fund balance is for the SAU to maintain and carry to cover expenses. Then in addition to that, you have your district, is what we call this somewhere else, where your town's paying, and what that schedule is, and
How our treasurer, our school district treasurer, all the appropriations come in through the town, and then those funds go to the SAU to pay. So when you look at the budget for the revenue side, each of the towns is paying in quarterly, and that's an area that we'd like to see if it can be paid in more frequently to improve their. Just two examples offhand. We have a 50% special education coordinator that we share with Northwood. So it's in our budget, and it's billed back, so we pay it out of the SAU and they bill it back to us, and it's budgeted here. Then you have the 85,000 roughly for OT that works, an OT position that works full-time, but is paid out of the SAU, insurance is out of the SAU, where all the amounts get billed back to us. And
On a schedule. That we're only carrying a month
right.
instead of potentially 6. We go on to the principal's office, page 16. Of course, the dollars per super line. So we propose not to have that this year. Operation of maintenance and plant. There. Changes to that.
Jump to the next line.
Well, so we had put that in there knowing that, as a reaction to the recommendation that we may have. Should apply.
Next is your transportation section. There's been no changes. In that line. Service exchange. those changes add up a reduction from the last one you saw. Hold that. Yeah. Then your tuition lines haven't changed as of yet. Your special education high school section hasn't changed. Your high school contracted service hasn't changed. And your high school speech hasn't changed. $107,845.03, less than the last time. Thank you for your help.
The grand totals go to 13,063,000 for 3.05% overall increase. There were a couple of sessions a few years back where, do you remember when we have warrant articles, and then sometimes the warrant article amount, after we close the books, would go back into the line? So we could never tie back to the budget number that was approved. And so this is just an accumulation below the line, so you can see the transfers that happen as a result of the warrant articles and the capital reserves, and keeping it below the line, so we don't have that problem with the budget line appearing to change at the polls.
Okay. Thank you for walking us through that. It's definitely a mind twister. You brought us some other items as well to
Would you like to go through that?
review. Anybody have any questions? Carol, Lee? No? I do really appreciate the transition that we've had over the years with regards to the budget and having these notes and being able to see the history and being able to, it's super helpful, especially for, you know, when we take a look at it outside of this environment. I ask myself questions, the answers are most often there, so I really appreciate you guys adding all that information to the budgets. All right, what are we on? This one? Financials, working draft.
these are your estimated revenues. Been some adjustments to that. Your adequacy, we take 95% of your adequacy grant estimate because it's an estimate. Safe. Down, there's your education tax and then your assessment. The big changes to this are notifications from people who tuition in that they'd like to either new tuition in or existing employees. So we got that revenue in for you, which is 5424. And the rest. We went through and looked at your special education aid, which is now a name change. So it used to be called catastrophic aid. Now it's called special education aid.
Can they give us more?
Just sounds nicer.
No, no. So that's the, you know, I might like to spend a few minutes on that with the budget committee, just so you understand. So
Absolutely.
once a student's special education cost equal 3.5 times, this is incredibly confusing. Once those costs equal 3.5 times the average tuition in the state.
The average tuition in the whole state?
Yeah, like,
Okay.
you know, $14,000 or whatever it is.
Right.
And we just got that number the other day. So then Mr. Byrne has to sit down and look at your high cost placements. And so, yeah, so if I walk you through it, so once it's 3.5 times, then we start keeping track and submitting. And then the state initially, is it 60%? See, I've been out for a year, I forgot. 60, they cover 60% of those expenses, don't get excited. Up to 10 times the AEM tuition. And they cover 100% over that. But then each year the legislature gets together and does an appropriation reduction. So we use the 60% number for that, and that determines your estimated catastrophic aid that you're going to get, your special education aid back from the state. So even though you can see that your special education aid has increased over the past 2 years and then the estimate, to view that as a good thing is sort of a death strategy, because because what you'd like to see is that you're under the threshold and your special education costs for individual students are so low that you're actually not qualified for special education. Because you're not getting reimbursed. That makes sense in a very confusing way.
Barely.
Yeah. Right.
We don't get 100% back of what we.
Right, but
What we
we
spent,
do have
right.
more students that we're paying 3 times, right, so,
Yeah.
so we do have some
You
additional
do,
need.
you do, but to look at the revenue as if it's, I mean, the revenue is good that you get it, but we'd
It's not
like
what we-
to not
Not have to have
get it. We'd like to be at a place where we don't have those costs. But overall, you know, in the past, Nottingham numbers, but I'm gonna give you overall SAU numbers. You went from 33 out-of-district placements down to 14. So
Wow.
Nottingham has definitely had significant benefit from that. We just had to, you know, do some placements based on need. And so now next year, I think you have 3. So
That's
you're,
impressive.
You're doing a nice job of meeting your children's needs.
That's great.
The other thing that you haven't seen before is kindergarten aid, commonly referred to as Keno Garden Aid. You got that for the first time this year, and we're estimating that you'll get that next year also. I mean, you will. So that's a new number for you.
Has that money come into the district yet?
Yeah, it comes in the same as your adequacy money, so it comes in a percentage at a time.
So the adequacy adequacy is at 50% still through the state for kindergarten, but then in addition to that, you get this.
So adequacy, in your adequacy formula, because when they did the adequacy formula, they paid for half day, they gave you money for half day, instead for full day. So in addition to that, because you have full day, you get the kindergarten money on top of that adequacy money.
So will the adequacy money be calculated at full day next year? Like with the half day?
Yes, unless there's some changes to the adequacy formula, which there is discussion about in various, and then with the new legislature coming in,
That could be a change.
it could be a change.
But we still, this, which is very, very nice, we still don't get the equivalent of 100%
Right,
adequacy.
so it works out to $1,100 a kid on top of your adequacy. So let's just say, for the point of discussion, I'm not even gonna make this up, I'll say 30, you get 30. But your base adequacy. For kindergarten, so you're getting $1,750, and then you're getting another $1,100 on top of that $1,750. So
So it would be.
you're not getting full.
But it's better than.
And the reason, and they generate that through Keno sales. Hence the name Keno. And the rest you've seen before, they're pretty self-explanatory. So we take a look at those three numbers: the adequacy, your education tax, and your assessment, and your total appropriation. And that determines, and then we go on to another worksheet that we'll go on to in a minute. So if you look down Nottingham School District history of estimated local tax versus actuals. So the first line is your estimated tax rate. You can see in the history that your estimated rate is generally higher than your actual rate, and that's because of fund balance returns at the end of the year. So we can calculate an estimated tax rate of 1641 as a worst case scenario, but we can't tell you what your actual rate's gonna be because you haven't done your fund balance return until the end of the year. So that's why you see the difference in your estimated tax rate as opposed to your actual tax rate.
Why is there such a significant difference in the school lunch revenues?
I'll touch on that. Going down to 65,000, it's just a number I use to be conservative, and it's based on trends that may be too low, but each year, generally lunches, fewer and fewer people are
I think
buying
what Mr.
lunches.
David was asking.
He's asking about.
No, he's asking about the 48 going to the 25.
No.
No, he's
No?
asking about.
You're asking about the 60? All right,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's just
Sorry
a
about
conservative.
What?
School lunch costs for those.
We actually, we have all.
Right now, we're seeing a bit of a trend. A lot of the lunches being served, the numbers-wise, are actually a reduction in our free and reduced lunch program. I think we're seeing a little bit less than we've had in the past of paid lunches, but I don't think it's necessarily based on population.
There is a change that just
Because
occurred.
Dimitri's not there.
It's, yeah, that could be the big hit.
There is a change.
It's just free.
Big contributory factor in reduced from 100% whole grain now to 50%. And oftentimes pasta is a very popular item, and reducing the amount of whole wheat flour in that will potentially make that a more popular And if they went down to, you didn't have to use whole grain, it would be very popular.
They wrecked the school.
But we all
Pizzas.
The whole grain.
Yeah. We still,
Have we decided to change
No.
what?
That was gonna be my question.
we're still maintaining a pretty high standard, and nothing has changed at this point in time.
We haven't made that decision.
Right.
I think it was just reviewing the changes from
Just make sure there's enough ketchup, and they should be good to go.
the.
Well, that's a vegetable.
Back to the Reagan days.
No, I am
And it's considered a vegetable.
Pizzas on Fridays. Pizzas Fridays
I
is
do
no
remember
I was in
longer.
high school then, like, this is the best.
Ketchup is sweet.
This is great, I love it.
The trend that I reflect also
Yeah,
is a national trend. I mean,
It is,
it's-
okay.
It's not, it has no reflection on what's going on to the quality of the meals.
Everybody sends lunch with their kids.
So the only, I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, but, we are gonna check in on your working draft. Under child nutrition, it shows revenue 48,000, and then the DRA estimated your revenues this year at 2,500, and I'd like, just out of curiosity, to know why that's different. So, we'll be looking into that.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, I do know that your
Oh, yeah.
18, 19 are based on what the DRA thinks, so. So we will be looking at it.
all right. Anybody have any additional questions regarding this?
I guess it's the 15th setting.
Yeah,
Right,
that's it.
down.
Yeah.
And the school and lunch, dedicated reimbursement,
Oh, your school lunches. Yeah.
right.
Oh, that's after we had the other.
And that's just because of the volume of students just flip-flop completely. Oh, well, and we have more kids, right?
That's beyond.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Just a quick, no, at the bottom where they have the asterisks,
Yeah.
what is the one asterisk referring to? The based on New Hampshire DOE, what number is that referring?
There should be an asterisk of the 95% of the 19.
Oh, okay, on that one,
I'll
okay,
put that in there.
thank
Yeah,
you.
we'll put that in.
And-
And then I think we had that service audit in 17, 18, and that probably changed the reporting. So you're showing 48, and then the next year you're showing. So I think that's probably, numbers are different, but we're gonna check into that. Because if you look at 48,000 to 2,400 is.
It's a small number.
Nice car. So, if you want to go on to this sheet you've all seen before, well, most of you have seen before,
Yeah,
so I think
proposed tax
you have some
impact.
familiarity with it. $100,000 above last year. Is that correct, Mr. O'Sullivan?
Yes.
Okay. Budget Committee, those are estimates, and if you look at your history, your actions always come in under your estimates.
I was just saying to Michelle, 2017 to 2020, in 2017, we were spending 2.74 million in high school tuition, and in 2020, we're talking about spending $4 million. So that is 100% beyond our control. So that does account for the increase, huge increase.
I mean, the majority of that is just the enrollment differences, and then, of course, the tuition increases, but they aren't,
Right, but
there are no, spikes in that, it's just, it is beyond our control, we can't control it.
Yeah, your actual your tuition rate for Co-Brown came in 2.84 for regular ed and 2.59 for special ed, which was under what we had anticipated. And Dover is another interesting story because we won't know until next year.
Till the
Till it's too late.
And there's no way to change that, or to request them
Well, you have a tuition agreement for
for Dover?
because they're city charter.
Yeah. Any Concord is the only city that doesn't have that, as far
Right.
as I know.
So from last year to this year, it's up 430,000.
And that's
Yeah.
probably a pretty conservative overestimate, just because we used, I believe, 5% as the inflation factor. And we don't have the definite numbers of students, so we may have too many going to programs. There'll be some adjustments in that, but points that have been already made about that's a public entity and they can't run the risk of being and committing to that.
But we won't know who's going to Dover. We certainly will know who's going to Co-Brown. And if we want to deduct that the others are going to Dover, and make some initial adjustments to those lines.
And I think you're right, it is the third, it's the school board meeting that's on the second.
Right. Would you like to go through warrants?
Yeah, that's probably the next step. Either that or the,
If you've noticed on your warrant, mark on there for you. Draft. So you know that those are a draft. There's still discussion that needs to happen on warrants on the 2nd. So you'll probably get updated warrants. The board felt it was important that we gave you what we had ready for you to take a look at. Warrant, well, looking those at their own, and ask questions as we go. I'm hoping that with a watermark, I can give you a draft paragraph. I go back and forth between, should I just give people the signed TAs, which are the changes in the salaries? What I'm fearful of is if I give out a draft CBA without a watermark, that somehow that creates a confusion if it doesn't get adopted and voted on, and then we have two documents. I'm not here, nobody knows that, and it's a mess. So. The board ratified, but I don't want to present it for signatures until after the vote, because if it doesn't get voted in, then there's no sense signing it. But we'll bring a draft. Could you make a note of that, Nate? We'll bring a draft to the board on the 2nd. Minor changes to language, and then we'll bring that to you on the 10th. Or we can even email that one out before. When we get to that article, I can go over some of the changes really quickly to the agreement. So, how would you like to go through these?
Anybody have any preference? Just go through each one. Article 2 is pretty straightforward.
First two, yeah.
Article 3. Cost item.
Actual agreement, so I can. Negotiations ended up right now. Board, first year we'll pay. Increase in salary. So that was some give and take with the negotiating team. The other issue, language issue, that we had to deal with is in the contract, they had a 30-minute lunch. Well, we got them to agree to change that to a lunch. Is the student lunch was 25 minutes, the paraprofessional lunch was 30 minutes, and there was 5 minutes of coverage issues in that space between asleep and awake.
Yep.
So I tried to clarify that. That was ridiculous. Employee too, so we can cover our responsibilities.
Good.
Those are really the only two language changes. That's about it.
Yep.
If you want to go on to Article 4, Article 4, need to have a discussion with the board on whether we want to do this or not. It's not required.
Okay.
Article 5, there's probably likely not to be more discussion on that. They determined this is what they would like. So that's pretty much in place. Same with Article 6. Article 7, again, additional discussion at the board level. I'm in the process, well, I actually have pursued some different costs for that, and I'll be presenting those to the sentence way is to describe a strategic plan, and inserted that into the warrant, so they haven't seen that yet, but you have. And then Article 8 is a warrant article that most likely will be approved by
The costs in Article 7, like additional staff costs.
Well, we don't exactly know what the cost is. Every quote went from 8,000. General strategic plan. They call it sometime now. And then assemble focus groups. So in Northwood, it took us from September. Generally is a consultant-based expense and printing. So.
And the board was, we were looking just to ensure that there's a more cost-effective way to do it, that we just
Yeah.
looked at other options.
Yeah, I mean, the latest, in addition to those quotes from Northwood, perfunctory relationship with another company, and their number was somewhere between 30 and 40. So it's ways from the conversation with the School Boards Association, it's more of a service that they offer than a profit-based experience. So that warrant may go away.
Determining overall space versus programming issues. So this group has taken a tour, has identified some priorities based on a document that the administration had brought to the board. They reviewed all of the work from the past reports. We looked at balances, and we looked at the building to see how many new permits have been issued. So we are waiting right now for NESDEC to come back with another enrollment projection, and we would like, we are looking to have some additional studies done, leveraging work that's already done. roughly, down which would look at the school, tell you where you can add or where you can renovate, things that could be done to change the footprint or to change the interior to better support programming. And they'll come back with that, and they'll actually, if you look at the paperwork that has been done in the past, they'll look at your program, your square footage, so much of that has been done. So, again, I guess there's an architect that you're familiar with.
Yeah, there's a couple add-ons to this. The first, before we get to the architect, we coincidentally received an email from the Department of Ed saying that they wish to work with the legislature on lifting the moratorium on building aid. So we responded with a number and gave that to them. They sent a thank you email today. So, you know, according to that document, they're, which would be helpful. In addition to that, I took the school advisory, space advisory work that's been done over the years and called an architecture firm that deals with schools and security and things like that, who I've used in another district that I have a relationship with. Amazingly, the architect sent somebody down that day to get the binder. And from the work that I described to him that's already done, it may be a low cost to finish. Yeah, I'm like,
That's awesome.
yeah, that generally doesn't, usually it takes me a while, but thing, we got somebody who lives right here, and we're gonna send them down this afternoon to pick up your binder, and I was like, you have to get the binder back, it's the only one I have. Good to you, hopefully we'll be able to have an answer for you for your meeting on the 2nd. That was pretty good.
Michael, you were on that. Weren't you
Donna Dance,
John Decker?
John Decker.
He was on, okay, so, but all those reports are there, and I think that it cost us $25,000 to get those, so this sounds like it's,
Yeah, it may come in much.
but our square footage hasn't changed, so
Right.
a lot of it's, and our program is, rooms are pretty much the same, except for knocking down walls and trying to find closet space and put those in and so forth, so. We have a storage issue, and that's the only way when we go through and look at it. Double doors on either side, store, I mean.
Yes, they have storage for the athletics.
The whole music, like the whole music department.
I was in their storage room. Their tables, their chairs, there's because it's in the building, using it.
All the things that you want.
Took a look at the locker rooms, and it's sort of like shoveling sand against the tide right now, trying to manage stuff and programs. Model has changed. space needs to change. And I will say, I applaud the board and the administration on the work that's been done almost every year when I try to figure out how to address this and address it. But I think they're at a point where we need to consider some options.
Quick question on going back to the building fund that hasn't been funded by the state. How long hasn't it been funded, and what's the process, or?
You have to apply, survey. Yeah, so to be honest with you, I've been in education in the state of New Hampshire. Administrator. They are funding 5 applications right now. Right. So even if they do building aid at the levels that they have historically, they've got 25 active and 20 applications behind them.
Waiting in the wings.
So.
Ask for an addition onto the warrant. And that was the first year when they did not have building aid, if I recall. So it was just the year before that they had ended it. And I think the last two that got something, and they're about 10 years. Bedford got about 54 million.
Yeah, because
Exeter.
years ago.
Right, so
They built that high
Bedford's
school.
about 10 years with
Yeah.
that addition, so they were one of the last ones to get it. There were others that were approved of what,
Yeah.
something that the board is interested in. That limit services.
Do you want to go through the default or what will happen?
Yes, to go through it at the next meeting.
they can't get grants started until they stick a shovel in the ground, and you just put in something. You can't just fix it and start getting
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
default. Sorry. Talk about the
Yeah, I have
expenses.
those, yeah.
Only if you have those, I know you guys didn't.
You quietly ducked out. And from Attorney Graham on the changes to the default budget and what's required. You notice your default budget is a lot more paper than your operating budget. And that's because of the level of detail that's required in the notes. So what Mr. O'Sullivan did was cut and paste into each. Have to present the default budget at deliberative session. And
We actually have to post it, I believe, in the deliberative session.
I don't know, so nobody's been through this yet, we're all going through it at the same time. Because the default budget is the school board's, hearing here, we may, but we'll check on that.
I think you presented.
Default is lower than your. I don't know if you want to go through it page by page. You can see the statements that are there.
Yeah.
They're not going to have the level, they're not going to talk about back.
So,
No, we really, it's
Lovingly mock you.
an admirable kind of mocking.
it's a we love you.
342 amplifies the notice requirement for the default budget, tying into the long-standing requirement that the default budget be disclosed at the first budget ended. Further explains the default budget. Towns and districts already. Research. We're in a town meeting. So.
I don't think this law applies to it.
So.
To allow people to ask questions.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yes.
Argument's good.
I just thought.
Yeah, right. And some of this disclosure contained in the document itself. So,
Right.
yes, we go on the document. Right, so why don't I just so let's take a look at line shown is considered under New Hampshire law to be a non-mandated educational expenditure. 9B and RSA 40:1311A. The default budget shown reflects the 2020 budget request was less than the 2019 approved budget and such. The default budget amount used in the 2020 budget. Ooh, that was a mouthful. Mr. O'Sullivan, you got another example of one of these?
Page
So, I mean, let's say consider deaf elementary.
Basically, anything that's going to be particularly expenditure, contracts, by that I mean contracts. Off budget is the amount. For instance, I'll use that you want. Off budget.
I got that. Okay, here. So. Our attorneys are recommending a conservative approach. Say your contract relevant. Next year is projected to be $1.50. Dollar amount to go to your default budget. Sorry, difficult. State of New Hampshire is not.
contract with high school buses. So you still include the cost of the buses, it's just this year's amount as opposed to.
Year's increase. Look at,
Compare the proposed budget with the default budget in transportation.
if you look at page of elementary school transportation, which is the top line on page 20. So your adopted budget for this year is $421,200. And your proposed budget is $435,945.60. If you go to your default,
Back to the 421. Yep.
They were taking out. The K through 8 lines have a very nominal increase over last year, and having to take on students' academics to cover this thing.
the other consideration in your budget is your high school tuition lines are squeezing your elementary school a bit, because you're increasing your high school. We want to be, yeah, you're increasing your high school enrollment and your high school costs are potentially at times going to be offset by elementary school reductions, which isn't really a preferable way to do things.
That's what happened. I mean, we're subject,
Yeah.
we're a small town, we don't have a high school, so we have to, when that happens. And then, of course,
Yeah, they're not an odd group, just. Yeah. Your,
kindergarten enrollment this year is 48, so it's up 10. And one of the hypotheses is that while you went to full day, so those kids that were out of private kindergartens came in. But if you track the numbers and the difference between kindergarten and first grade, and you go back a few years, there's not a big uptick. So it's not.
Right before the storm. So, oh, yes, I'll take those.
Thank you.
There's
Yeah,
a set
John
here.
And Fred, I mean, Ben. Fred.
There's one set already, but without the
Okay,
financial
perfect.
review. Let's see what he's adding.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. Scott, do you have, please? One on there, but I have two others. Yep. That's
I was hoping to get a step or two.
So, monthly ones, do they go?
Necessary.
Oh, okay, it's not really part of it, yeah, it was like
Take a lot of notes on them, we don't necessarily need to.
all right.
We don't do it every month.
Well,
Probably just once
Here
a
is all,
month.
he never
yeah, I
uses
know,
this.
we did.
Oh,
Yeah, I have it up.
First floor down over there to the second floor.
And yeah, that time it was 80.
A newbie who gets to do all 4 years there, hopefully, we'll see. 3 years. No, it's still it's still considered it's still considered a construction site, so they leave all the lights on 24 hours a day, and, pad areas and all that kind of stuff, so it's interesting. So, all right, enough of that. Talking about Dover.
Having started there, we arrived on time. First thing. So you're gonna be paying out, or we're gonna be paying out $40,000 at the end of this year. So that will come off that line. And of course, we can't encumber that right now, because we can encumber it now, but right on the 15th, so we haven't set up. Permanent substitute line, the reason that you have so much left in that is because of the employment pay structure, and that's been adjusted in this year's budget. Regular tutor line, some years. do. That. All came in the same. despite, of course, that. Insurance buyouts, that's just to me is something which left money in your health insurance plans, but. General supplies, you started with $24,000, you have $7,000 left, but it's December. Page 2. Regular ed section. What's left, and primarily that's because you've had some changes.
Those are all my remarks in that section. The only other one that's just I'll highlight just because we were there that goes about
Is gonna be, so you can see which ones you're
Yeah.
kind of anticipating to be under and over
Actually,
by?
generally, previous years, that process would be moved. Just as an extra kind of, do you think maybe we could do this a little earlier next year? Do you think that, you know, not saying we're gonna happen, but see if we can shrink that spring. In May for this discussion about fund balance. And we're trying to shut our books down and get our auditors in. Come in a second step and Art?
I was just curious.
Yes, all tied together. Right. You know, another challenge that we have this year is we have a new team, and so our audits are just being finished now, but backing that timeline up, because it's all tied together, so predicting a in this string.
Right.
So our hopes are that we can forecast a little more efficiently in the future, but you know, we can always change and can't really predict when what our goal and targets are.
I think Mr. O'Sullivan has done a really good job of looking through the chart accounts, cleaning it up, making it more organized. Things are encumbered very early, that's.
Yeah.
And so you can get a fairly good idea of what your anticipated balance is, you know, looking through your
Yeah.
POs, so that's much tighter.
And the encumbrances are interesting because what we do is so things are then you're just chasing your tail sometimes. So what we do is we meet the week before a board meeting to go through these, and I quickly go, I have questions about this, I have questions about this, and then they go research it. Then there's always issues with encumbrances and payroll, so then the payroll person has to go in and release in the encumber times 4, because you got the SAU, you got Stratford, you got nothing, you got, and it's just very cumbersome and stressful at times, especially when the payroll person is trying to do payroll and the superintendent's saying this expense report's not accurate, and the, so it creates some stress. So I also am hopeful. And it imports in, and then you view it and check it right now. So yeah, there is. Everything should be a little easier. And so having a system in place that shuts things down when they should be discretionaries, and then having some just the amount of it can happen, and this, the number should have been a 4, and I think it was either a 7 or I could have to have a keyboard in front of me, but it was the key directly above it. It wasn't. did things differently. Room doing it relatively the same way. You can have some variances based by independence of your communities, but then your charts of accounts are different. I mean, even, I will say that when I code special ed, when I used to code special ed invoices in your district, and let's say it was a cost we were gonna divide by 3, I should be able to write title, so, which is pretty minor. All the time. That can be.
Hence why you're so neurotic about this.
Maybe. I'm learning too, so it's a lot of repetition. They will tell you. I said to one of your members that my poor daughter's an environmentalist, and I've gone through so much paper this year I can't even tell her.
Line 1 was
Pay your bill back.
Oh, okay.
Fine, somebody's gonna that encumbrance. May even be able to bill by the pay cycle. I don't know. On to page 6. Curriculum, really because of
The health insurance just had a
Yep.
change of plan,
Yeah.
so you've got your initial budget, what
Yep.
you've paid out, and then you encumber the reports for the change, and we'll show the overage from the estimate.
any questions on page 6? Page 7, let's go down to line 152. A little confusing. I'll give the first glancing blow at it, and then Mr. O'Sullivan can take over. You had an infrastructure grant that was awarded by the state last year, right? So the way that that works is you outlay the money, and then they reimburse you, right? So you can see that it went out, and then it's showing a balance of 45,600, and that's the reimbursement amount, and that came in this year after the books were, so that's why.
Is July 1st is all the difference it takes to cost something like that.
Right.
Yeah. Any other questions on page 7? so we can probably, because we have a number, we can. Also reduce that in the budget to the amount that and your GASB 45 just finished, 3 o'clock this afternoon. So we don't have to bill for that.
And we need that to get our audit for the June 30th, 2018 period completed.
There's 29 cents left in the SAU line.
You're not getting it.
Nate, I'm gonna give it to you.
We can get half.
Nothing that remarkable on page 9. Any questions on page 9? Page 10? Again, if you look at the insurance premium on building and contents, you're trying to forecast ahead what it will cost. It came in a little lower for this year, but again, we don't really know what it'll be for next year. Is that subject to the cap? Yes.
10%.
Yeah, we actually have an agreement with that can only go up to 10%. Any questions on page 10?
For the transportation, I know we're down a bus. Does that just not get
It
unencumbered?
comes through
until-
as a credit every month.
But the full amount is still encumbered until the
Yes.
end.
Yeah,
It's not a full credit.
yeah. We get like an adjusted credit.
75% of the one bus ride.
Yeah, and that comes every month.
So we will have a line on, we will have a balance.
You'll have a balance on
On
that
that
line.
line.
If, oh, if we go back up to replacement of equipment, see where that's overdrawn, line 224. So, the school had an opportunity to upgrade their lighting system in the gym, which will result in a significant savings in electricity. So the board elected to pay that out in full. This is a 50% match, is it? Yeah, right. So the total cost of the project was somewhere around 12, and then 50% is matched. So the board elected to do that this year, and hopefully over time we'll be able to save money on the electricity. That gym is pretty
It's amazing.
high use.
The lighting is amazing, what we put in, it's like literally night and day.
It's pretty much on 24/7, isn't it?
And now it's all motion sensors.
Nice.
The type of lighting itself is actually more cost efficient. The amount of control over, what parts of the gym you can actually now dim for presentations, it's all,
Oh, nice.
yeah,
They were
it's
also
really good.
scheduled to replace bulbs and balances. That would have cost more down the line, because you would have to replace them.
Yeah.
We did it a few years ago too, same
With the street
person did all the lighting around the parking lots and everything.
Homeless transportation elementary is over. Again, you're trying to forecast a year ahead on what your homeless population's going to be. It doesn't necessarily, yes.
I was just gonna say that it's not just elementary, it says elementary, but it's elementary and high.
Right. Right.
So I just wanna make sure you.
So if anybody wants either me and Nate to quickly explain how homeless transportation works under mandate, I can, or we can skip it for another day. It's up to you. You curious? So Kenny Vento is a provision that allows, that makes some provisions for homeless students. So there's two types of homeless students. There's a homeless student who has become displaced and ends up in your district, or there's a homeless student who is from your district and becomes displaced. For students who, and then there is a discussion that has to happen between the districts, or the district, as to what the school of record should, the school of origin should be. So you may have a student from Rochester, for instance, that becomes homeless and becomes doubled up with a family in Nottingham, and the team has decided that the school of origin, you know, there's a plan for the parent when they secure housing to be back in Rochester. So therefore, we would share 50% of the cost with Rochester and transport that student back to Rochester. Works exactly the other way. But the one thing that gets confusing for people is transportation's not automatic. That sometimes we wouldn't offer specialized, if the student's in the Nottingham district and is homeless and attending Nottingham school, which happens, that they would just take the regular bus.
Sure.
It's a complicated little process that you go through. And just so you know, Mr. Byrne is your homeless liaison at the SAU level, and you have one in each school. So those lines are hard to gauge from year to year. Any more questions? Any questions on page 10? On to page 11.
Excuse me.
Your tuition lines are encumbered, all right?
I'm
fine. And so what will happen is after I think it's the April bill for Co-Brown, we'll adjust encumbrances. You've got kids moving in and moving out, so you do that, I think right after you get their last bill, and I believe, is that April's bill? Yeah, those will be adjusted, they're just fully encumbered now.
Start in August, right?
And then, yeah, we start paying in August, but there's a reconciliation in the spring, based on. And nothing too remarkable on the rest of that page.
No new things. Touch that line.
Right, we haven't touched that line yet.
The special ed lines for the high school are still showing a large balance in a couple of them due to the fact that Dover hasn't sent us their full bill yet. And when you receive their bill, that's when you will see those numbers go down.
Right.
So it can't be encumbered because you haven't been invoicing the company.
Yeah, we always like to have a first invoice or at least a purchase service agreement.
An encumbrance is several things that drive it. One is a high certainty of what the expense is going to be. Secondly, it's any purchase order that's been generated. For the most part, it's, you know, certainty around the expense. And if there's a degree of uncertainty, or I guess you could, if you really think you're going to spend the $39,990, it's debatable, but you could encumber it. But we really start to take a hard look at this, like the superintendent said in January around, you know, what do we expect to continue spending? Because we're gonna try to really get that general fund balance number fully understood, in the book.
And previously, what would happen is, people would try to set as many encumbrances as they could in July or August. And then we get an actual bill, and without going into the system to check whether you have an encumbrance, all of a sudden you'd be looking at a line that was overdrawn, and then I would look at it and say, what's going on here? And then somebody would go into the system and manually look and find out that there was a double encumbrance in there. So we're trying to limit the encumbrances to, when I have a bill, I'll do an encumbrance kind of thing. So it doesn't cause that confusion within the financials.
Unlike your house where you probably don't beg people to send you bills, we wind up, when you get towards the end of the year, really chasing after people to send us the bills.
Right.
And you'd be surprised the number of businesses that just don't send you a bill.
Especially special ed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Our transportation, we're, Debbie is amazing at getting them.
Yeah, she
Everything that-
starts chasing you down, but it is amazing that you have to like beg for invoices.
So we can close out.
Any questions on page 11? Page 12 is pretty self-explanatory. Here's an example of a purchase service agreement, though, if you want to look at line 257. So we contract for certain services through Stratford Learning Center, or the SAU sometimes, but let's say Stratford Learning Center. So what happens in July or June is Mr. Byrne gets a stack of purchase services agreements, and those purchase service agreements are based on a 50% payment up front and a 50% payment in January. Therefore, we have the material that we need to set the full encumbrance. And then since we're only paying twice a year, we can do a payout, and then it's efficient, we don't need to look at it again. Pay it, and it'll be gone. So that's an example of when they give you a bill. It's showing the $539,000 balance. I wouldn't bet money on that. There's some adjustments that will need to be made as we get later in the year. Are there any questions about the expense report? So, Mr. Haddock, if it's okay, I'm gonna let Mr. Sousa go so he can rest up to start school tomorrow.
Absolutely,
So he's fresh for all the children.
absolutely.
The last day before vacation.
When they're all really, really hyper excited.
Okay, you should be more afraid, yes. Send them home sugared up.
Cookies and discipline referrals.
We get some school sugar doctors.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Chris.
Have a great night.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, thanks. We'll see you at drop off. All right. So I think that's everything, right? Thank you very much for the
Yeah, I mean, we'll have
in-depth
some,
detail
you know,
and,
We'll have some adjustments after the second, but we'll give those to you on the 10th. Try to get them to you before then.
yeah,
So
and
do we have one
again,
more draft, or just the hearing, public hearing?
what?
Is that one that was to be decided, usually do the third draft?
You with tax impact. January 10th.
Changes are gonna happen on the 2nd.
We have a meeting on the second.
And there's no way there's no earlier time.
Yeah, there's no other way to.
Yeah, no, of course. So, yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't read the bill. We could just go over the changes.
I want to say that we set a meeting.
Get it right. I think it's still the meeting to, if there are changes and warrants, and then go over minutes or whatever. So it's a shorter meeting.
Can you just post
A
it
shorter
and then
meeting, yeah.
cancel it that morning if you want to?
Yeah.
We have so many people who show up to watch that.
Our fan base.
It's gonna be a snow day anyway, isn't it?
It's gonna be
No.
snowing anyways.
No.
Yes, love is snow.
It's not going to be.
That's 2:30.
So I,
We can turn around.
all we can do is, we've gone through it.
And to the warrants.
Thank you very much for your time. and for your- But, no, so you have your vote done before. You will have to vote.
On the second.
Hold on.
There, we have a meeting on the second, we're not gonna have it again for, after the hearing.
Right.
So we would have to vote on it.
On the second.
So we've been voting on it on the second.
Yeah.
Unless you want to do another meeting, but I don't think we do.
I do not believe we do.
Well, I did your
How else I
agenda,
can say that?
I shredded your agenda today, so I think you'll be okay. No, no. Have a nice holiday.
Merry Christmas. Safe drive. On our end, Dawn is not here, so we don't have minutes from the last meeting, so we won't be reviewing those. I take it CIP committee has not had a meeting, so
nothing.
there's no subcommittee comments or input. I guess we're at the round table. Any input, questions, concerns regarding these budgets, these presentations?
I have a quick question going back to when we vote. If we're meeting on the 3rd, and then the public hearing's on the 10th, the next two meetings are only designated to the town budget, so when do we vote?
That night.
On the
Okay,
10th.
the 10th that night, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Typically how
Okay.
that goes, Lee, is
Because he said after, and I'm like, well, what do you
Well,
mean
it's
after?
After
Okay.
the meeting, we
Just
deliberate
right
after the
after.
meeting, we
Okay.
release everybody and,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
we present to the 15 people of the town
If we're lucky, right, 15?
and receive their input.
Right.
Yeah,
And then we
okay.
I think
Right
on the
on that
school one, we don't get 15 people,
Yeah, okay, more the town
because they
budget.
come to the deliberative
Yeah.
session.
Okay,
It did, yeah. Depends on the issues being brought to the table,
okay.
how many people show up.
Well, you know,
More contentious
more
than
people are
others.
paying attention to the select board meetings, so you never know, they may
Yeah,
come over.
It's because
Okay.
they've riled up the neighborhood.
Yes. I was impressed that someone actually went back and watched a selectman's.
So it's been sent to us via YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. And they took some pretty good notes, I have to say. It was.
They're moving their workshop meeting out of this room to the gym because
Oh.
it's going to be an overflow.
oh,
This is they want to
This is one on
The
27th.
27th meeting.
stop maintaining all the emergency lanes. or,
oh,
like,
all, well, the private roads, right?
the
Quote unquote.
Yeah.
town maintained emergency lanes. Oh yeah, that's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, that's gonna be a very interesting discussion. Well, we'll have to be there. When is it, 27th?
December 27th, yeah.
Which was going to be our meeting.
mean like?
Which was gonna be our meeting, right, so.
Yeah, yeah, that we moved, so.
Glad we didn't hold the calendar. Yeah, we should come down, and it's gonna be here in the gym? Alright.
You can watch it at home on TV.
Yeah, no.
Be
I
interesting
might
seeing
have
how
to
they-
actually show up, just because I wanna hear it.
Yeah, I was gonna say how they mic
Get
it,
that-
the gym.
Get the energy that's in the room. So, yeah, I don't know where I stand on that, so it's, you know,
Apparently,
I
it's
don't know
going to be an
that.
educational session for the select board members who don't know the history of maintaining those roads.
mhm.
I might have to be there. Like to hear that.
And I know that what dirt roads we have typically are really well maintained, so, the ones that
They
I've
used
driven
to
on.
be,
They used to be, okay.
Yeah,
The ones that I've driven on.
not so much now.
Depends on the storm.
I've given up going the back way to Epping, because it's just too dangerous, or you don't
Yeah,
want to. I was lucky, it wasn't a busy time, but if there was another car going the opposite way, it would have been pretty hard to navigate the
hairpin
potholes and the hairpin, yeah.
yeah. All right, any other things, Michael?
The only thing I can think of is, well, it's probably premature to bring this up, but there have been occasions in the past where we, where a number that goes on the ballot changes after we've decided on it. And it's typically with the deliberative session, or, I'm sorry, yes, the deliberative session. And then we've already given a recommendation to what's on the ballot, or what's supposed to be on the ballot, then that changes, and we have to concern ourselves with, would we still recommend that figure? And this would happen in the event that at the deliberative session, the public says, we don't like that number, we amend it to this other number. Or either
Right.
changing text or something that we as individuals on the budget committee, whose number of voting for or against shows up on the ballot, may have wished that we could have known that that's what was gonna be on the ballot and changed our vote. It doesn't happen very often, but it could happen, it's conceivable. And so we just kind of want to think about, maybe there's a date after the deliberative session that we might want to get together for that discussion before the ballots are printed, before the.
So we could re-vote on
Oh,
this?
so revote, I mean,
Before the public hearing,
Yeah.
or the budget. Yeah.
We
Okay.
could potentially decide that at the end of deliberative session if we need another meeting, or,
That makes sense.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like
Because it
this
might
year
not
there
be-
might
might
not
not be
be any,
necessary.
yeah. There's not much, it doesn't seem like there's much in terms of warrant articles or things that will change substantially this year.
and how far in advance do they do the printing? Do we know?
We have to get it turned around pretty fast
quick,
after the
yeah.
deliberative session.
Or I guess we could ask Dawn next time she's here, when would we have to meet by?
Yeah.
We are meeting 2 days after.
Okay.
It's February 5th, right, is the
Well, the.
deliberative,
we
and
don't
then the
have a date.
7th.
The meeting has to be held between February 2nd and February 9th as the school deliberative session. And then the
Oh,
town.
no, that's the snow
The
day,
town
sorry.
budget public hearing has to be done between February 5th and February 15th.
Yeah, so we are meeting for the town public hearing
Yeah,
after the deliberative, so
potentially if,
do it at that.
on the 7th of February, if there was a huge change on the 5th, and this is all snow pending.
Yeah.
Yep, just a little heads up on that possibility.
We'll have to mention that.
Wonder
to
if there's
Chris
like a
and Dawn.
placeholder on the agenda for the 7th, because the problem is you'd have to have it on the agenda for the meeting.
Oh, yeah,
But I wonder if she could put a placeholder in.
that would be a good idea.
All right, we'll keep it in mind. All right,
That's all I have.
Oh, one silly thing I noticed on the final, budget committee meetings, she did put in just a typo. It says Tuesday, February 12th is when we have town elections. That should be Tuesday, March 12th. We don't have a printer, I don't think we have I never got a hard copy of it, it was just something she emailed.
oh, I didn't
But-
see it,
I'm just,
so, I didn't notice it.
yeah, no biggie, I keep on looking at it, I have
So
to speak up.
shoot her a comment
Yeah.
back and, cause I'm not gonna be able to find that particular
okay.
string, so if you'll shoot Dawn a comment back
sure.
and have her correct it, and then she can resend it out to everybody, that'd be great.
I don't know if I should wait until, hopefully she's feeling better soon, but how far my email will get buried, depending on when she gets back.
Think of it at the next meeting.
So, put a GIF in it. So, all right,
Probably spread my jerky.
yeah, the only thing I have is obviously happy holidays to all of you. Enjoy the long weekend and so on. I'm sure some of you are working Monday, but you know, hopefully it's a fun time for everybody, family and friends. Yeah, right? So, yeah, you have to go back and make another batch.
7 more batches.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, with the double boiler.
That's
That's the trick.
That's a trick.
You gotta melt the chocolate first.
Your picture looked very tasty. I'd still eat it, so.
I love bark.
Good to know.
It's that salty sweet thing, you know, with the
Yeah.
saltines and the chocolate and caramel. Good. Next steps, do I have a motion to adjourn?
A sec- oh,
All
okay,
right.
do it.
All in favor?
Aye, aye.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.